All right, welcome back. We are COMP1011 in the summer 2022 semester at Georgian College, and it's week 6, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. What we did last time, before the break, is if I go back to IntelliJ, let's just run this thing, we made some simple things to draw in our interface, but none of this stuff is connected. So the drawing functions are there, but none of this stuff even works. Okay, so we need to make all that work and connect everything and finish this piece off. Okay, so how do we do it? Well, we have the beginnings. The difficult part is what we have already done, which is really just getting everything going. I'm just going to get rid of these things, these little function calls here, because that was just an example of how we do it. So the next piece is really describing how we would do the stuff we want to do. So first of all, what I want to do is think about our some of the things we have here. We have a combo box, a couple combo boxes, and they're both of type vector 2D. What I want to do is I want to load up the combo boxes with the stuff from the database. Remember that our database here, if I go back, we have a database, and inside of our tables, for the vectors table, we have in the columns, we have vector ID, X, Y, and magnitude. So I want to get that X and Y, those X and Y coordinates from our vector table, and I want to fill that inside of our start vector 2D and end vector 2D combo box. That's what I want to be able to do, okay? Again, this is relevant for your exam next week, so take a look. So then how would I do this? So first of all, we can use a function we already have. I'm just going to comment out the graphics context for now because we don't need it. And the first thing I want to do here in my initialize functions, I want to create an array list of type vector 2D. We're going to call them vectors, just like we've done before. I'm going to access the DB manager. Hey, DB manager, I want you to go through the instance function, and I want you to read the vector table. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using the database connector that we've already made through our DB manager, reading the vector table and storing it inside of an array list of vectors. Yay, awesome. The next step is really just pretty simple. I'm just going to do a for loop, and I'm going to do a for loop, which is a ranged for loop. I'm just going to type it by hand here. So for every vector in the vectors array list, what I want to do is I want to use the start vector combo box, and I want to say, let's get items. That's the thing. And if you look at the PowerPoint, it actually shows that. So here's the combo box, get items. But instead of adding all, we're just going to add. And we're going to add in that vector. So whatever the vector is, I'm going to add it to the combo box. Now, because the vector is, as an example, converts to a string, it'll show up nicely in the combo box already because we have a toString method that we've overloaded. I want to do the same thing at the same time with my end vector combo box. We'll have the same group of vectors we can use here. And get items, add, and then vector. So this is how you add items to the combo box, okay? So this is the first step. So step one of configuring a combo box, add stuff to it, okay? And you can do it by, depending on the type. We've made ours, all of our types is vector 2Ds. If you were going to add in strings, you can make it a type of string or whatever kind of data you want to store in the combo box. Okay, cool. So that's the first one. Let's test this. So if I run it, then we should be able to pull down, those values now. Take a look, right? Pretty simple. So I can pull down those values pretty simply, and we have those values. They don't do anything right now, but we can certainly pull down the values that are inside the database. This is coming right from the database itself. Okay? Nice. Okay, so now what we need to do, first we need to get the data. So step one is really display the data in the combo boxes. So get the data, vector 2D data from the database, right? Display the vector 2D data in each combo box. That's what we've done there. And now I need to configure the combo box. Remember, we had some configuration functions in the utility method to do this. And it looks very similar. So what we can say is something that looks like this. We'll say, hey, start vector combo box. If I was going to configure this, the combo box themselves, this is an initialized function. I can set the on action. Instead of setting the on action through fxml, we can certainly do that, right? I could use a lambda function where I pass in the event. We can use the arrow. Well, the arrow, well, it's like an arrow function. If I can do the arrow function properly. Come on, there we go. And the arrow function will basically say something like this. I have the event, and that event itself is the thing that is me changing the combo box. That's the on action that we want to have, right? And what I can do is when I set the combo box, I can take the start vector I defined way up here. Remember that? Start vector. And I can say that the start vector then is equal to the start combo box, right? Dot get selected model, and then get selected item. It's kind of a weird set of coordinates we need for this one. And that's all that it does. So we can certainly do it this way. I can also plan to do that through here. So I can do it through for every one of these things. For example, for my combo boxes, if I want to be even simpler than this, I could set up a action event, right? Just like we've done for the draw line button and the draw rectangle button. I could do that there as well, or I could do it here like this inside of a method. So that's a way of doing it. Let's check out and see if I did it this way. What does it do? I want to show you both ways because sometimes it's more convenient to do it this way than it is to do it this way. There might be problems I can solve the other way, this way around here, where this is kind of programmatic. I kind of do it on the fly. Let's see if I can do that. So if I run it, then the start vector combo box will work. I can pull it down and click this, and then we don't have an error. And so now the start object itself has it. To prove this, we can just do we can say if my start is not equal to null somehow, which it should be never equal to null, then we can system.out.println the start vector. And we don't have to put start.toString because start is a vector and it has a toString method by default. So if I did that again, let's just show you that one more time. So we're printing out the start, not whatever we selected, but the start. So if I click on 1020, then I should get 1020 down here, which is pretty cool. So I got that working. Let's just show you that that works. And I could do it this way, right? And I wanted to show you this as a possibility, as a way of doing it, because that's the on action. What about if I did it through this way? So if I said, hey, here's the combo box, this is the other way of doing it, and we can just make a new name for it. We can say the start vector 2D combo box, really long, start vector 2D combo box changed. It's a changed event type of thing, right? That's the on action. And I can press save there, and I can do the same thing. Let me copy this thing because I don't have to type it again. There we go. And click on this one, and then type in start. Instead of start, we'll say end. The end vector 2D combo box changed. And if I click save, so file save, and then if I go to view, and if I go to show sample controller skeleton, well, then it will show me those two methods, which are looking like exactly like these methods. So we could do it this way too, like we did before. I just wanted to show you the lambda conversion. That's all. So don't have to do this. I could just do what I've done before, which is up here. I could put those things inside there, those events. And I can literally just populate this part here, copy that one into the start. And I can do the same thing for the end. So I can say end is equal to the end vector 2D vector combo box, get selected model, get selected item. So I could do it that way too. And then just to give you some output, we can do the same idea here. I can say that, again, if the start is not equal to null, then let's system.out.println that start object, and then do the same thing very simply for the end. So end is not equal to null, then let's print out end to show you what that looks like. And if I was to run this thing, you can see that I'm going to get the same results that I would normally have. So I can just pull this down 30, see that prints, and then 10, 20, and then those are the 2 points. Okay. So nice. So that's how it would work. So we don't need this. This is just to prove out for you, like troubleshooting, if you will, just to show you how that looks. Okay, and then we would need that other kind of thing. So we've got our combo boxes wired up. Let's put that up on GitHub. So terminal git add dot git commit -m. We'll say wired up combo boxes. Okay. So again, I think that's pretty straightforward. We don't have to worry about the actions. Well, the color picker is very similar to that too, believe it or not, right? So just like we did the combo boxes, the combo box changed, as an example, we can do the same thing for the color picker. So let's go back to this, and we can go to the color picker, click that, and we can say, I think we called it vector 2D color picker. Yeah, shape color picker, shape color picker changed. That's what it'll be called. Save. And we'll go view, show sample controller skeleton, and we'll just grab that event right here, so we don't have to type anything. And it reduces errors. I like that too, right? So we can kind of go in here and under this place somewhere, put that in there. So there's our shape color picker changed event. And then like we have before, I set up the color value up here originally with the default color of black. Then what I can do down here where my shape color picker changed happens, I can simply say that the color is equal to the color picker, the shape color picker, dot, and then get value. Let's get the value from the color picker and we're done. That's how simple it is. Nice. So that's what the color picker is. And if you want to, you can, just to check that out, you can say, let's print that out, system, won't even do a check, system.out.println, and we'll say whatever the color is, right, which is the value. So you notice that it says, if I want to kind of put a toString, let's see what I get when I do a color toString if I select it, just to test it out. So if I choose the color, this one, you can see I get that hexadecimal color that's out here, right? So this works, no problem. Save, and we can say that here, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say wired up color picker. Okay. Nice and simple for you, I'm hoping. No problem. We're just going up the line here. So we've got our color picker and our vectors. We need to get our line width going. Line width is the spinner. We've already done the spinner stuff before. We have a function for this. And remember how we did the spinner, setup. We can actually do that in the initialize function. And the way we would do this, it's a little bit special, is we can say something like, hey, utility, let's use an instance method, right? And what we want to do with the instance method is we want to configure We have this function already we did last time. Configure a vector 2D spinner is what we did. And this is the width, the line width spinner. That's what we have. And what we want to set up is the minimum value that it would start off at, which is 1.0f. We can't make it less than 1, let's say. If you really want to, you can make it a smaller value, like 0.25. So small values, minimum value, 0.25. But I recommend something like 1 starting off, or a default value. So let's say 0.25 would be the minimum. Can't go lower than that. The maximum, we can say how wide do we want this thing? Maybe 10, as an example, max. And the default value would be 1.0f. And the increment value would be 0.25. So something like that is pretty small. So that is your spinner. Now, if you guys have forgotten what this configure vector 2D spinner is, that is what we did. One of the first things we did, it's like week 2, we made this calculate vector 2D, and we have these spinners that are doubles. And then what we did was in the utility function, we have a function that does that, a little utility helper function, which is configure vector 2D spinner. And in here, what we did was we configured the spinner value factory, and as well as a text field that we used in an event listener with a lambda function. And what we did was we parsed the value as a float, and we updated the value of the spinner itself. So that's what we did there. Okay, and all that does is it changes the value of the spinner, and it configures the spinner to work in a certain way. That's all it does. It doesn't really change anything yet. Okay, back to this. So that's what this piece does right now. And if I was to run this thing, then what you're going to get is the spinner is functional. So you can see that I can spin it all the way up to 10 max, and I can go down to 0.25. Okay, that's what it does. However, even though I've run this is a little function that runs, what it doesn't do is physically do anything at this moment, right? The only time it's going to do something is when I actually press the buttons. And for those, let's put this up. So we wired up the spinner. That's the first thing. So clear git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say wired up the line width spinner. Git push. Very simple, because we already had done the work for this in a prior lesson, right? Okay, very good. So now that we've got this piece, I pretty much got everything I need inside my initialize function. And I'm not going to really put much in here anymore. The graphics context stuff I'm going to cut out of here. We're going to put that somewhere else. So this is what my initialize function kind of is left with. Okay, so again, we've got the data from the database. We put the data on each combo box, and we initialized or configured the line width spinner. All the configuration we need to do is done. And now we need to wire up some of these functions. So let's think about how these things work. And I'll talk about the clear canvas button clicked in a second, how that works. All right, first of all, how do I draw a line? Let's draw the line button. So the way I would draw the line button is I need the context. So boom, boom, there's that graphics context I need, okay? I also need when the line needs a width. So this is the perfect time to get that width changed, right? So I'm going to say something like, well, my line width, when I press this button, my line width, whatever I've set the line width to, is I'm going to go take a look at that width spinner, this one, the line width spinner, and I'm going to get the value, right? And I'm going to convert that value to a floating point value. So that's the line width. I need to do this anytime I need to change the width of an object. So those are the two things I need to do first. And then once I've got that, and I've got the graphics context, notice we're going to kind of duplicate this a couple of times, right? The next piece is I'm going to call the utility function. So I'm going to say, hey, utility, I want to go through the instance method to draw the line. Here's my line. And I'm going to pass in the context, the color, the line width, right there it is, and as well as my start and end, right? And where am I getting all this stuff? My start and end. Notice they're all purple because it's all up here. I've kind of defined some functions up here that are some class variables or class properties, if you will, and these are like private properties. That's what they're like. These private properties that I'm using here, there's no getters and setters for this, but direct access to these values. I'm holding them as data members, private. We can also call them private data members, right? And I'm setting those up by doing this way, the kind of using those values as values that are kind of global to this particular controller, right? And that's what this draw line button click does. Let's check it and see if it works. So run it. Now it draws lines with a width and a color. So let's try this out. So I want to start off, pick a color, maybe the 0, mark, and then from there go to 1020, a small line, very small line. It's going to be very kind of up here. And we'll make it so that it is magenta color, and we'll make the line width 5, right? So kind of something like that. And then if we click draw line, it draws that line. There it is, right from the corner. Okay. And we can do it again. We can kind of go 30, 40, and we'll go from there to 50, 60. So again, a small line, it's not too big. And we'll go with kind of a thinner line, and we'll choose the color that's going to be red, and then we'll click draw line. So there's the second line. So you can see we can draw these lines all day long based on the values that we have in the database. Those are the only ones we can do. Okay. Again, a little bit of a contrived example to make sure that you know how to load data from the database, but this is kind of the way we do it. Okay, so there's your line drawing. It would be nice to clear the canvas, wouldn't it? Because otherwise we're going to have a bunch of stuff here that we can't clear. It kind of doesn't replace what we have here, but rather it does everything that's there already. So let's kind of put that up there. We'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say wired up the draw line button. Draw line button. Okay. Very straightforward. Again, I don't think there's any questions for you guys there. It's like literally this was all the work. We did all the work ahead of time, right? And the line width was the lines width spinner, which we kind of just did. And we've taken that, we just reused that. It's kind of a review from like week 2. Okay. Next, let's do the draw rectangle button. So very similar to the draw line button, we're going to need a context. But a rectangle, remember, is filled, so we're not going to need the line here. So the line is not required. But we're going to do that same thing. We're going to say, hey, utility. We're going to go through the instance method, and we're going to draw a rectangle. And we need the context for the rectangle. And we also need the color as well as the start and the end. So that's kind of what we can do. Start and end for the rectangle. Start is the top part of the rectangle, and the end is the bottom part of the rectangle. Warning, if we did it this way, I'm just putting it out there, we don't have a width and height. The end must it must be bigger than the start. If the end is smaller than the start, we're going to have a negative width, and the draw rect will fail. Just letting you know. It won't error out. It just won't draw anything. Okay, so that's something that you need to know. So let's try this out. So run it, and we can draw a rectangle now that's filled between 2 values. So again, I'm going to go and pick 1020, and then pick a larger value like 7081, and let's make it black. And line width doesn't matter because it's going to be filled. And let's draw rect. There it is. So there's a rectangle, which looks like, in this case, just because of our coordinate spaces, it's looking like a square. Okay, there we go. So we can also draw with the same values. We can draw a magenta line, where we can draw a line right across of it. There we go. We can do a lot of stuff. We can layer one thing across the other thing, and depending on when we draw things, it will rewrite the pixels or overwrite the pixels with the next operation that we do, which is pretty cool. All right, so that's wired up the rectangle now. So let's go back to terminal and git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say wired up the draw rectangle button and git push. Again, you can see how this is really easy at this point, right? How about the draw circle? Very similar to what we've seen already. In this case, we do need line width, so I'm just going to grab these 2 lines. So here's the circle. We do need line width. We don't have a value of making a filled circle. That was never something we have yet. We could maybe add some kind of checkbox if we really wanted to, where we can say if it's filled or not. Okay. For now, though, we're not going to do that. And so draw circle, we can go to utility.instance, the instance method, and we're going to draw the circle. And we're going to pass in the context, the color, the line width, and we're also going to pass in the start. That's the center value, let's say, and the start value. So this is something also to note. We don't differentiate between start and end. It must be the start value. So we don't have any documentation for a little tool we're making right now. We need to know that the start method is the way we're going to draw the circuits. Okay, and then some radius. We never kind of decided on a radius for the circle button as well. So that's something else another control we could put in there, like how big is the radius? It could be that the radius itself is another spinner, the radius spinner. We don't have that, so for now we're just going to say all of our circles are 50 radius for now. Okay, so again, things that we're missing. And the last thing we're missing is, so line, start, and then Boolean, is it filled or not? And we're going to say that our default, the circle is not filled by default. Okay, for our little circle button. Let's see if this works. So run. So again, things we're missing. We're missing some kind of radius. We don't have a control here for this. We could add more lines in our configuration for us to make that happen. So again, if I click, let's say if I go back to 7081 as an example, and let's say the line width does matter here. So let's say the line width is like something like 5, right? As an example. Notice also I can't edit this, so I forgot to put the edit value, the check mark on for me to be able to edit the value here of my spinner. I need to make a change to that here in the scene builder in order for me to do that. For now, we'll leave it as something like 3 and click draw circle, and there it is. There's our circle we can draw with the button. We could also choose another value. Let's make sure that it's something that 7080 is a big start. So let's do, what if I said 7080 and go from 0, then I could draw a line that's black, that's also 3. So draw the line, there it is. And then I can also draw a rectangle that's black from there. And so those 3 buttons are working now. So there we go. So to some degree anyway. So we can say something like git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say wired up draw circle button, right? Version 1, git push. All right, so last one we want to do so far for tonight is the clear canvas button. Clear canvas button. So for this, all we need is a graphics context, and there is no, I could make a function for this in the utility, but it doesn't make any sense because it's a one-liner, right? Really, at the end of the day. And what this looks like is, hey, context, I want to clear the rect. I can decide a piece, an area that I'd like to clear. I can clear any part of the canvas, but instead of clearing just a small part of it, I can clear starting at 0, 0. That's what I can say. That's the start. And then I want the width and the height. And this is where I'm going to use the canvas get width and the canvas get height. And that's basically going to fill the entire canvas. I'm going to clear the canvas and put it back to its default value. Save. And then if I do that, if I run it, and if I draw something, let's say, for example, I want to draw a circle, just click draw circle. You can see that it draws, even if I don't choose anything here, the circle's radius starts at 0, 0, right? And it's a radius of 50 by default, right? It's not filled because we haven't had that check mark error there or not. As well, if I want to draw a line, let's say from 0 to 50, I can choose a color and draw a line. There it is. And I want to clear the canvas, clear, and then it clears that canvas. So it kind of rubs it out. There, so I've kind of wired that up. And let's do that one. So we'll say clear, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say wired up, clear canvas button. So all the buttons have been wired up, but now we have some modifications, some adjustments to make. So again, here for the spinner, if I go to properties, I want to make it editable. So when I make it editable, that means I can go in there and select a number, which is pretty cool. Also, if you notice these things, right now, these things are not editable. So I can't put a value in here. If I was to make them editable, just wanted to show you what that looks like. It changes the way they look. Okay, changes the way they look. It also selects, gives us from a combo box perspective, we can select a visible row count if I want so many rows to be visible at once, as an example. Okay, which is cool. I have other controls I can put here as well. I can style them. Lots of other things we can do from a properties perspective, right? And there's also a prompt text, right? And you know, again, that allows us to, if I click on prompts text, just to show what this looks like here, it says a prompt text. It says the combo box prompt text to display or null if no prompt text is displayed. Prompt text is not displayed in all circumstances dependent upon the subclass of combo box base to clarify when prompt text will be shown. For example, in most cases, prompt text will never be shown when a combo box is non-editable. This is prompt text only shown when a user input is allowed via text input. But remember that if I was to allow an editable thing, I'm going to save this thing. So I'm just going to go here and save. If I was to allow this, just to show you, right, and then rerun the program, it may not be what we want. So first of all, notice now we can type stuff. Okay, what does this mean? It means nothing. And that's not really what we want. We don't want to be able to edit this thing in any way, because then it won't make any sense. It'll actually mess things up, right? Although it won't change what's selected. What's selected here is what we're going to get from a value perspective. So making this editable has no value. Making this editable, notice how it just errored out here, because it doesn't make any sense, right? Because it's a vector 2D, it doesn't make sense that these things would be editable. If they were other things like names, like strings, then that would be okay, right? That's when you would turn the editable part on. Here, we don't need to make this editable, so we can turn this off. Okay. And again, I'm putting this out there because I want you guys to understand what you can do with these things. Save. Let's run this again. So again, I'll run it, and let's see what happens now. I can't edit it, but that makes that's okay because it makes sense not to be able to. All right. And okay, there we go. So then from a line width perspective, that's okay. Now I should be able to edit the line width. What if I try something like 20? Well, you know, the line width maximum is 10. And if I was to draw a circle, you know, it defaults to 10. It takes us back to 10 because it doesn't allow me to do something like that, right? And that's the great thing about validation. If I do something like I want to make this minus, it won't allow me to do a minus, right? I can subtract the values. I can go back to 1, and I can change the color and layer it on top, right? And then draw a circle again. So draw the same circle. There's that line. So it's kind of neat what you can do with drawing and overdrawing, which is pretty cool. And I can clear the canvas and try it again. So that is, it's good for the spinner, but it's not good for the combo boxes in this case, because in this case, they're vectors, right? So you don't want to mess with the vector. All right, so that is some stuff we can change for sure. The other thing we did was we configured the grid pane. We said that the grid pane, it has this FX border style, and it'd be really nice if we put this border style into a class. And we can do that by going back into our app CSS. So here's our app CSS. We have labels. We made labels. We have our table column. And let's add in another thing for our, maybe something like our, we'll call it our border for our grid pane, right? So, or that's what it is, grid pane border. So grid pane border, right? And we can kind of align that. We can say fx dash border style, right? And we can say none, none, solid, none. That's kind of what we said. Oops, none. And the fx border color we said is black. That's what we kind of said. And that grid pane border is now a class that we can assign to the grid pane. We're going to save that. And if I go and we can remove those, let's remove them. And you can see that that makes that disappear. But I want to put that back by using a CSS style sheet. We can attach a style sheet. And again, what we want to do is, notice it says source main resources CA Georgian College ICE and then app.css. We want to connect it. Once I've connected the app CSS, I can use a style class that's listed here. And there's the grid pane border. And once I do that, it's applied. And that's a better way of doing it than actually inline styling. So that's a change we made, okay, to this. Save. Okay. And now if I run it, no difference, but it's going to use a style here as opposed to a style that's inline. Okay, so that's kind of a better way of doing it. And let's put this up on GitHub. We'll say we modified git add dot, git commit -m, small little adjustments. We modified the CSS file, app.css to include a grid border pane class. And if I can spell modified, I can't even spell that today. Tired. That's what happens when you get tired. All right, so that is this piece. So you've done that. So now things that are missing. And this is kind of, if you're interested in doing this for yourself, what could you do? Well, we could definitely, if you look here at the left, there is a checkbox. All right. So we could include a checkbox next to the circle. So, or below the circle, which is another control. Or a configuration in some ways, right? Which is it filled or not? So line width, is it filled or not? And again, this is very basic, this scenario here. So we could include a checkbox that if it's filled or not, right? That's one thing we can do. We could also add another spinner for the radius, right? Specifically. So radius and if it's filled or not. And if you really wanted to do that, it's not so difficult to do. The checkbox for the checkbox for you know, how this works for if it's filled or not. I mean, literally, we just have to modify our layout a little bit. Remember that it's going to expand to fit, so you just got to consider where you want that configuration to be. If you want this to be here, so if I was to add a row above, then it would expand this part here, and then you'd have a checkbox here that says filled, right? Yes or no, right? So then you'd have some kind of label that goes here, right? And you could configure this so it would say filled, right? So filled, is it filled or not? And then you'd have a checkbox, right? So let's say here's the checkbox, drag and drop that in. There we go. And the checkbox also already has a little label with it. So really, maybe is this even required? And most likely it's not, right? We can kind of put in filled here, or we can take it away. We can just not even have that label. If you don't want the label, you don't have to have it, right? You can configure it the way you like, right? Which is kind of cool. So filled, no label for this one. And once you've done that, once you've configured the checkbox, you want to give this, again, a bit of thing. So you want to say something like circle filled checkbox, circle filled checkbox. But this is if and only if that if the circle is filled, then you want to do something with this checkbox. Like you want to turn it on or off. If you want to give it an ID, you could give it an ID, but again, is it really required is the question. Do you want to make this required? I'm going to put it in there because I usually add stuff to control. So again, I'll say something like circle filled checkbox. And on action, we can have a circle filled checkbox checked event or changed. It would be a changed event. Right, there it is. And then what I can do is I can save that, right? Save the configuration. And then I can go to view. I can go to show the samples and then get that checkbox happening right there, where I can go back to IntelliJ. Very simple modifications, as you'll see, right? And not that one, the canvas controller, here it is. And then I can just put that where it makes sense, something like here, right? And again, it's asking for a checkbox, we'll Alt-Enter to import the class. So now we have that, and then we'll go back to this, and it also has a circle filled checkbox changed event. There it is. And we'll put that somewhere where it should be. I don't think we need that other identifier. That's just me, but that is how it would work. And what happens if it's changed? So we can say that if this thing is changed, then what? What is it? What do we want to do? Well, we need some kind of value up here if it's filled or not. So we'll have some kind of Boolean. So private Boolean value, which will say filled. We'll call it filled, right? And we'll say that by default it's false. We'll give it a default value. And then down in here, we'll just say that the filled is equal to the circle filled checkbox. And we want to say it's the value that we want. And now notice it says is selected, is armed, is focused, is managed, is pressed, is resizable, hash code. So what is the value, do you think, for the checkbox? It's got to be a value of something, right? So there's some gets you can see here. And if we scroll down, again, probably a get value, my guess would be something like that. If there's something like that, this get width, get property, get whatever. And if you can't figure it out, well, I can't see that there's a value here that's like that. Well, then we can look it up. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So if I say something like Java, and you'll have some things you've never seen before. Like I said, JavaFX checkbox, right? So if I look that up, it gives you the Oracle information, and it has Boolean properties, right? Selected indicates whether this checkbox is checked. So that's what we want, selected. So is selected, which is the Boolean. And if it's selected, then it's filled, right? And if it's filled, then when we use the draw circle button clicked event, we can also put in here, is it filled or not, right? And we're also going to update if it's filled, because we're going to say, you know, filled, right? That's going to be basically updating, because line width is this value, right? So if I check if it's checked, it's going to just check if it's filled. So there's really nothing for me to do here except for do this, if it's true or false, because it's going to retain that value for me, right? Filled. Save. And if I go back and run it, then that should work now. Let's see. So I'm clicking it, right? And there it is, it's checked. And then if I draw a circle, then it should be filled. Yay. And then if I change the circle, right? So let's say, for example, I want to make it in a different spot. And then I want to make a different color. And then it's not filled. And if I choose draw circle again, you can see it's not filled. Pretty cool. If I choose it again and draw it, then you can see it's filled. So very, very simple and didn't take much to figure out, because we just did a quick lookup and no problem. Okay, last change. So to our configuration, we know that we don't have we need another spinner somewhere for thing. Filled is pretty cool. Is the circle filled or not? Maybe even you want to put some information in there, circle filled, or not. But filled can also work with rectangles, right? Which means it's kind of neat that you can make a rectangle that's filled or not. We're not going to go there. That's a bit of too much of a change. It takes a lot more, many more steps to get that done too. But maybe another spinner that has, instead of just line width, we can also use the radius. So radius would be another thing we can do. Line width and radius. Okay, well, let's add another row above and undo. I want to add another row between these ones. So let's row more. So add row above. There we go. That's what I meant to do. And we'll just grab that next label. We'll put that over here. And we'll call this label properties something like radius. Okay, so that's the radius. And then we need a spinner control. Here's a spinner. Very easy. And we'll have to label this up. Do I want it editable? Yes, I do. Okay. And let's go back over here. Pretty simple. What is the spinner ID? This will be the radius spinner. Okay, nice and easy. And we need to notice that there is no change event here like we did before. We have to configure this ourselves. So now that I've added a spinner control, again, I want to go to View, Show Sample Controller, and we can go down to the radius spinner. We want to add that below the line width spinner. And just like before, we can go here inside of, just below the line width spinner, we can put the radius spinner. Yay. And what type of spinner is it? Well, it's probably going to be a double spinner again, just so that way we can use our little utility function. Why not? And let's go scroll down until we have our initialized. Let's add another configuration for that one. So we'll say in our configured, the radius spinner. It's really this simple, guys. Instance, configure spinner, the radius spinner. So what's the minimum value for the radius? It should be something like, I don't know, 1. That's real minimum value. And maximum maybe should be something like 200, something large, like 200 radius. It's like the whole, kind of canvas pretty much. And the default value should be something like 50, like we had, something that's a defaulted value. And the increments will go something like 5. So we can go 5 at a time. And again, you can play with these values to make them nicer. And let's run this thing and let's see if it connects. So again, you can see the radius now can work. I can choose the radius, but we need to have this do something. So where does the radius come into play? Well, it'd be nice if we had some kind of private data member up here with radius. Let's do that here. We'll say private float radius. We'll start off with a default value of 50. And then what we want to do is when I do a circle, draw the circle button, then instead of having the radius here, we'll put the radius value here, but we'll also get it. We'll say radius is equal to the radius spinner dot get value dot float value. And that's exactly what we did before. So we store it in the radius every time we click the button. That's what does it for us. Save. And now if I go to run, then it's simply, we have that value in there as well. So I'm choosing a radius of, let's say, something else. It's editable, so I can kind of highlight that and go 10. I want it filled, and I want to draw the circle. Boom. So it's really small, right? And let's move it. So let's move it so that it is at 50, 60, and draw the circle again. There it is. There's a small circle. And then I can make the radius really massive, like, for example, 200. There we go. And I want it to be filled, but I want it a different color, like maybe orange. And draw a circle. There it is, massive circle that overwrites everything else. So really cool, where you can change a lot of little values here that you want. I can also draw lines, make it a different color. There's a little line there, and I can clear the canvas. So pretty cool. I think we covered everything at this point. So let's put this up on GitHub. So I'll say under terminal, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added missing controls, just to blanket that one, git push. All right, so that is your review. So that gives you all the different pieces, how to put things together, how to read from the database, how to connect the database that we've got already. The last thing really that's missing, if you think about it, is a way to be able to see the other views, right? So if I wanted to go from the calculate vector 2D distance controller, this one, right, which is actually adds the vector to the database, that's what this does. If I want to go from here and I want to go to the, from the calculate vector 2D distance controller, if I want to go to the canvas controller so I can see what it looks like, then I need a button for that. And that's something that's missing. Again, things that you can put in. But remember, I showed you how to do that inside of the chart view and the table view. That's for your assignment, right? This stuff here is just, practice, so that way you can kind of put things in here. Too late to say that slow down. I'm sorry. What do you want to see? I can go back. But yeah, if I wanted to, like right now, what we do is we start right inside of the vector 2D canvas. And if I wanted to start with the calculate vector 2D distance controller, then I can do that too, right? So that's here. This is calculate vector 2D distance. So I can say calculate vector 2D distance. This is where we're going to start. And if I was to run this thing, then there's this, right, where I can add stuff to the database, where it shows me my magnitude and whatever. And if I need to, let's say I need a larger value, let's say 200 and 200, or 100 and 200, I can put them in now. So I can say 100 and 200. And let's put in 100 and 100. I'm going to add those two in there. So I can do calculate. That's the distance between them, right? And I've added a couple of additional vectors in there. But it'd be nice if I had a button to take me to this screen, right? So we can open that up. I can go open, and I can open the vector 2D distance controller here. Here's the button. And I can put a button somewhere in here. Now, notice what we have is a VBox, but the VBox, it'd be really nice if this was embedded in something like a, I can wrap it inside of a grid pane. There we go. Or I can wrap it, the VBox, inside of a border pane. That's okay too. And that will be wrapped inside the middle by default, right? So that's something we can do. And remember, this is our first go, kick of the can, to do that. And then at the bottom, I can insert a button. So let's say I can go to a button control. So here's our button. And I can put that at the bottom of the border pane. So the border pane, there's the VBox, right? Here's the grid pane, right? And undo. Then what we can do is at the bottom of the border pane. So if I take the button and go here, I want the button to be kind of at the bottom of my thing here, my controls, right? And at the bottom here, also by the way, my VBox, which is this thing, right? And the grid pane, the grid pane is inside the VBox, right? And the button is outside of that, right? If I want to um, go with my VBox here and I want to um, fit to parent, that's also something that I could have done. So it would have moved everything. But it's okay the way it is right now. There's a lot of wasted space because this is just our first kick of the can, right? So here's our button. And remember that from a layout perspective, if I go to layout, here it is. It's alignment center. If I want to align center right, it'll go to the right side. I can rename that button. This is just in our other thing altogether. And at the top here, I can say something like, I want to view the other view that I have right now, which is our canvas view, right? So we can say we'll call this view canvas, right? That's our button. And what we can do is we can wire that button up. We can say that on, that's what we used to call them on, in this case, on view canvas clicked. That's the button. I'm going to file save. And I'm also going to view the show sample controller skeleton because one thing that's missing from this is a couple things. I'm missing the on view canvas clicked event, this one. So I'm going to grab this one here and I'm modifying this one. So I'm going to go back to IntelliJ. And I'm running late, but bear with me. And if I go back to the calculate vector 2D controller, I can put that little event anywhere I want before the initialize method, something like this. And then I can just use the scene manager. Hey, scene manager, I want to go through your instance function and I want to change scenes, right? Remember the change scene, the way change scenes is I got to put a string for the fxml file name that I want to change to. And that is going to be the vector2d-canvas-fxml. That's what I want. That's the thing that I want. But remember that I need two parts to it. The change scene itself has two pieces. The action event, which is just the event, followed by the name. That's what I want. And the reason why it's giving me an error is because it's saying, hey, you probably want to make this an exception method. It throws an exception now because it might not take us anywhere if we don't load something properly. So if I was to run this now, and I see the button, then it'll take me to the view canvas itself, where now I can add vectors, and I can also see the new vectors that I have that I just added. So something like, 60-60 to, or let's even go further back. So something like 30-40 to 100-100. Let's draw a line there. There's a bigger line that we have here than we had before. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But there's no way back. So it's always nice to have a way back from a thing. We don't want a dead end, like we said before. So if I was going to add another thing to that one, so going back to that one, then, which is this one here, I want to add that same kind of button idea. So I take that button, let's just minimize this, and I want to put it at the bottom. So take the button, put it at the bottom. There it is. And let's, from a layout perspective, let's go again to center right. This is where the button's going to go. And kind of underneath the canvas, this is where the canvas is. This is where the button is down in here. I could also wrap this button in some kind of VBox or something else like that, or HBox, which might be okay as well. So let's do that. So I can wrap this in an HBox if I want, right? So I could do that, and I could put other things in there if I want to as well. And again, what I'd want is the H box to have the alignment, not my button, because my H box would have an alignment that's right, but my button would have a default alignment. So I'm just showing you how this works. So undo. We don't need that. But here it's center right, and I'm just going to go to properties and just do something like calculate vector 2D distance. So I can put that in there, calculate vector 2D distance, which actually just adds vectors together and also calculates the distance at the same time. Again, a little flawed in terms of things. It's just a little bit of a contrived example again, but for you guys to know how to be able to go from one thing to the other. And again, what I'd want to do is have a action event. I don't care about the button name, something like, and notice I did it differently here too, where we want to say something like calculate vector 2D button clicked. Okay, that's what I'm calling it. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go to View and show sample controller skeleton, where I'm going to grab that event method. Calculate, there it is. Grab that underneath the combo box is where it wants it to go. So copy that one and go back here. And I'm just going to put it underneath the combo box, which is looking in the wrong place, Tom. There we go. So there's something like here where I put it, right? And then, just like we did before, I would use the scene manager to be able to switch scenes because we don't want a dead end scene. So I'll say something like, hey, scene manager, want to go for the instance function and change scene. I want to pass in the events, and I want to go to a scene that says calculate. It's got to be very exact vector 2D distance. Okay, there we go. Save. And again, because change scene might not happen, we want to make an exception, put that on there, let's save. And then if I run this thing again, you can see it's going to start in the calculate. But if I don't want to do calculations here, I can always view the canvas. And then I go back and forth between the canvas and this screen right here. Kind of cool. Okay. And that's good. So let's put that up on GitHub. So added buttons, we'll say navigation buttons. For between canvas and calculate. Okay, again, questions before we go for the day. I think I've covered way more than I expected to today, and I wanted to make sure that you had everything you need to make things go. The lab report for ICE 6 is up, so all you have to do is go through it and submit. You have until Sunday to get that done. And again, assignment 1, the details for that will be up. If not, submit for assignment 1 this Sunday, and then we moved the due date for assignment 2 to next Sunday at the same time for the midterm tests to give you guys a chance to submit everything. And that's it for me. I'm going to stop recording now, and I'll take any questions and any kind of help you need. I'm here for you.
Tom, quick question.
Yes.